Flavio Volpe, who's the president of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association. Thank you for coming back today.
Anytime.
You were speaking to Andrew yesterday before the tariff announcement, and you called it beforehand Trump nonsense.
Yep.
Does any of it make sense to you this morning?
Well, let's walk through what he did yesterday.
Okay.
He said in the middle of the afternoon, we're going to go with auto tariffs at 4 o'clock, sent out his press secretary. Around 5:30, he came out and he said, tariffs on every car that gets imported into the U.S. from around the world. Then he talked about chips. Then he talked about wood. Then he went off on an incredible tangent. Well, all of us were saying, where's the paperwork? What does this mean? When is it on? What does it have to do with parts and raw materials? And then as we sprinkled through the next couple of hours, we got a whole bunch of updates as if the federal government was catching up with the president, who was probably looking to distract from something else yesterday. We heard that he said, American parts will have no tariffs. Well, no kidding. They don't come in to the U.S. from the U.S.
Right.
On parts, other parts, he said, look, on American content inside imported vehicles, you get a credit for that. But the Secretary of Commerce has got to work with CBP, and we're going to see the tariff on parts on May 3rd. So in its totality, tariffs on everything from Canada. But also, you know, when you do the measure of your counterparty here, they are, you know, it's like a monkey with a machine gun. They're just going in all different directions.
So finished vehicles, tariffs for sure taking effect a week from today. But on the parts part, because of what you just mentioned, it's so unclear. I mean, how to determine which parts are in fact Canadian made or Mexican made. You tweeted a graphic. Let's just talk about this quickly, because it really speaks to the nature of the conflict. You said you cannot unscramble this omelet. Well, take a look. This is rear suspension assembly. This is just one part of a car. And what does this illustrate, Flavio?
Well, look, in all of those, in that illustration, those are real parts, come from real factories in those different locations.
Right.
They are how we do business together here. The White House, and sometimes the president himself says, well, that's inefficient. Well, they're looking at a map, and we're looking at satellite image. We haven't had a border in automotive between Canada and the U.S. since 1965. Certainly haven't had a border between the three countries since 1994. So you work with what's most efficient. Where the raw materials anchored, where's the assembly anchored, and how do you draw it in? The fact that they don't understand this or they don't care is going to crash the U.S. Auto sector. Yesterday, the scheme that they came up with said, well, maybe it isn't 25%. If half of the parts in a car assembled in Canada is American, or like American parts and raw materials, maybe you get a credit against that tariff. Well, even if it's half, it's still twice the profit margin of everybody operating in this. And you can't lower your price as a parts supplier to cover off that surtax. You have to pay that in liquid cash to CBP.
CBP, what's CBP?
Customs and Border Patrol. That's who collects the surtax.
Right.
S&P Global 2 weeks ago said what I've been saying here for at least 2 months. The industry will shut down within a week. The industry cannot bear these costs, and they can't pass it along to a consumer either.
So let's talk about this. That really helps us understand why they've got a little bit of a pause to figure out exactly what would be under these tariffs for parts and where they all fall under trade agreements. But when you talk about consequences, I was just struck. One of my colleagues sent to me, Cox Automotive. Do you know them? I'm not familiar, but it's the world's largest automotive services and technology provider. So this is what their chief economist just said in a phone call with reporters. If the tariffs go through by mid-April, that's not far off, we expect disruptions to virtually all North American vehicle production, 20,000 fewer vehicles every day, which is about a 30% hit to production. This is his prognosis. This is Jonathan Smoke. Bottom line, lower production, tighter supply, higher prices, reminiscent of COVID days, 2021. But then he went on to say few thought it would be possible that we'd break the chain with Mexico and Canada, but it seems like it's about to happen. April 3rd seems a bit like a doomsday if those tariffs on Mexico and Canada go through. I mean, you've been saying something similar, but to hear that again from someone, a world leader in his part of the automotive industry, what do you say in addition?
I'll tell you why I'm smiling. I've been saying this since December and January. We have two precedents. We have when the Ambassador Bridge was blockaded, and when the pandemic in March of 2020 caused for everybody to not be able to guarantee that their workforce was there. Cox Automotive is very highly respected. So is S&P Global. So is Linda Hassenfratz, the executive chair of Linamar, who's the second biggest Canadian supplier. But that company's got operations around the world, one of the top 25 suppliers. Everybody in the business knows what's going to happen.
Which is?
We're going to have a shutdown. And we're going to have a shutdown. I say a week. Some people are saying 2 weeks. Okay, what's the difference? And when you have a shutdown, I just came back from Washington earlier this week, meeting with congressional reps in Alabama and Tennessee. And all I said to them was, forget Oakville and Woodstock and Oshawa. In Birmingham, for example, there's 1,300 jobs from a Canadian supplier here. If you let the president take open shots at Canada and they succeed, you have a problem. And by the way, the rest of Birmingham is full of suppliers, 5,000 to 7,000 employees that supply into Mercedes production, which is not going to happen. It may be that he has to send the U.S. over the edge to have hundreds of thousands of auto workers at home before he understands the depth of the problem that he's caused. So you can't do what he's saying.
Which is immediately, we want production immediately. We're talking years and at it huge. Obviously, you've helped us understand the stakes and again the uncertainty and why. The road forward. We just saw Mark Carney arriving in Ottawa. We're going to get a federal response, one would expect today. What do you think needs to be in place today? Retaliation, phone call, and where do you come in?
I spoke to 3 of those ministers in the last 24 hours, maybe the last 12 hours. Spoke to the Prime Minister's team through the day yesterday and into this morning. Said 2 things. Number 1, you don't need to respond today. Let's get our ducks in order. This is a very complicated matter. We've been prepared for months, but the fact that he's pulled in the rest of the world and then overnight threatened on Truth Social that if Canada and the EU get together, he's going to punish both countries. The President of the United States thinks Europe is a country. And so he said, let's keep our powder dry until we're ready. And, that just might mean a few days. And then I also turned around and said, look, when we did the NAFTA renegotiations, we were at a formal table. There are elements of that government, the USTR, the cabinet minister responsible for trade, that are responsible for the USMCA renegotiations next year. Jameson Greer, he and Lutnick at Commerce have said, well, some of this can be dealt there. Well, maybe we have to use whatever leverage we can to hurt them back and then say, let's get to that table together. That table is math and science. It's probably why they're avoiding it. And then also, we have this rebate program, the EV rebate program, the principles of which all needed to be rejigged. But, we might start thinking about using programs like that.
Well, they did for Tesla.
Yeah, well, please, if you don't even want to get me talking about Tesla.
We don't have time for all of that.
No,
but, I mean, they're looking at that, obviously, that rebate program.
Yeah, what we're saying is use that similar principles of that to encourage Canadians to buy Canadian cars, Canadian-made cars, half of which are American.
So when you say leverage, just before I let you go, what do you think to have most impact there, least impact here? What is the retaliatory strategy that you would like to see, and does there need to be a phone call?
Well, I'll say this: there's nothing that we can do that's going to hurt them more than what they just did to themselves, and so we need to keep that close. I said, if we don't need exemptions in auto, if he does this, he's going to put Americans at risk, and that's a piece of leverage that we have. From a retaliatory point of view, there's a limit to what we can do. But if we do it, let's go hard, quick. And I think that's what they're prepared to do. Does there need to be a phone call? Look, one thing that's resonated with me from Mark Carney for the last month or so is when the President of the United States shows respect for our sovereignty, then we can come to the table. There's no point in having a Zelensky moment. And even on a call, in the call, what are we going to say? We shouldn't be pleading our case. We should be presenting math. But if he's not prepared to receive the math, let's put politics aside. I know that we're in the middle of an election. I think I heard reasonable things from both of the leading parties' leaders. We don't have to do this show for each other. There's much more at stake than just the election.